we are in week 3 of this series we are calling Relational Warfare. And today is the day we are going to be talking about men today. And I'm going to tell you something, and you might not agree with me at the beginning of our time today, but just give me some time to build this out, okay? And I think we'll get there. And so let me tell you, just right off the bat, that men are just as complicated as women. Now, some of you are looking at me and you're going to say, are you saying women are complicated? Why, yes, I am. So don't judge me, because I have heard more women refer to themselves and their kind as complicated. I've heard that come out of women's mouths more than I've heard it from men, maybe because men are terrified to say it, right? But because a woman can be crying, and I will walk up and go, what is wrong? And you go, I don't know, right? And so anyways, so don't judge me for calling you complicated, because I'm saying men are equally complicated. Is that fair? I didn't get a single response. Some of you are like, I don't know how to answer this. And I don't know if I like you this morning, Pastor Sean. But today we're just going to get into that. If you're a man, usually when you hear that there's going to be a sermon about men, what happens, men don't like to show up for that. And the reason they don't show up is because most man-oriented sermons are, you're not doing enough, you're pathetic, be a better man, okay, go home, do better. And I'm just going to be honest, I'm kind of tired of those. And I realized a long time ago that is not exactly effective preaching. And so today we're going to talk about men. Next week we're going to talk about women. And I'm just going to say it's going to be fun, because I'm going to tell you, men, everything you need to know about women spiritually. All right? And so we're going to talk about these from a spiritual warfare standpoint. And so today what I want to talk about is 3 basic questions that our enemy hits us men with, and that I'm going to guess every single man in this room or watching online later, we either are asking, or we have asked, or will ask at some point in your life. So again, it doesn't matter if you're married, previously married, never going to be married. Let me set it up this way. I want to set this up in a way we can all understand, men or women. Every single one of us has had a dream before. And when I say dream, I'm not talking about a goal in life. I'm talking about an actual dream that you've had while sleeping, okay? And so some of us have had some weird dreams, right? Like, that's just the reality. Like, have you ever had a weird dream? Like, we could probably take turns just sharing about the weird dreams that we've had, and someone would share something, and someone would be like, oh, I've had that one too, and so it'd be fun. But have you ever had a dream where, like, in the middle of the dream you realized it was a dream? like you're just like, I'm pretty sure that this isn't really happening. And so, like, something so outlandish happens, and you're like, okay, this is a dream. But here's the dream that I can't stand, and just about everybody here has had some form of this dream. Now, I'm going to tell you the dream, and what I don't need an interpreter coming up afterwards and telling me what you think my dream means, because you talk about dreams, there's always a charismatic saying, I can interpret dreams. I don't want to hear it, okay? So in the dream, and you've had some form of this, but in this dream, I was literally in a giant hole in the ground, okay? And there were people that I know who could help me, who were outside of the hole. They were nearby. They did not realize I was in this hole, okay? They were getting ready to fill the dirt back in to the hole. All I had to do was call out to them, yo, I'm in here. Don't fill the hole in. But when I tried to speak, nothing came out. And so have you ever had that dream, or some form of it? Like, And I know you're thinking, this is a pretty dark turn, and it is, right? We're in a series talking about spiritual warfare. But so you're in this dream, and you try to yell, and you can't. Or you try to run, and it's like your feet are like 50 pounds each, and you just can't get any help. You're screaming in silence, but you feel like nobody is hearing you. What I just did is I emotionally and spiritually described every man in this room. And you're like, you're like, that's a bit of a stretch. You're right, it is. What I should have said is I just described emotionally and spiritually every man on this planet. 70% of men in a recent survey admitted they struggled with some form of secret depression. Secret because we don't want to talk about it, right? Because we don't want to appear weak. And so 80% of people in prisons today, just in our country, are men. And now, this one, see, I even struggled with this next one because, again, when you're talking spiritual warfare, it's dark. But 85% of the suicides that happen in America today are men. Women tend to outlive their husbands some 10 to 15 years on average. Men are screaming and suffering spiritually and emotionally, and it just seems like there is no relief. Now, men do know how to speak, right? I mean, we do sarcasm really well, right? We do anger really well. Men are wrestling with this. This is just the reality, and it's hard to talk about. Like we don't like to talk about it. In fact, you may be here today and you're uncomfortable that I'm talking about this in church. But where we're gonna go, there is significant spiritual warfare, and it's high time the church starts talking about these things. Not just our church, but the church globally, because the devil, the enemy, loves to mess with our minds, right? We've been talking about this. And he does this in so many different ways. We see it happen. We saw it happen week 1 when we first started talking about this in Genesis chapter 3, right? Remember, Eve and the serpent are having this conversation that they probably never should have had, which, by the way, Adam doesn't even speak in that conversation until verse 10. It's just Eve and the devil, right? But it says in verse 6, the woman saw that the tree was good for food and delightful to look at, and that it was desirable for obtaining wisdom. So she took some of its fruit and ate it. She also gave some to her husband who was with her, and he ate it. So he didn't say anything. He just took what was given to him, and he ate it. And I believe since this time, ever since that first day, every man has been asking 3 questions. So 3 questions men ask, but don't ask. 3 questions we wrestle with. Number 1, do I have what it takes? Do I have what it takes? You know, manhood. It gets defined in so many different ways. Like, have you ever just heard a sentence start? A man is blank, and just fill in the blank. A man is this, so you see that statement, and like you hear it, and you're like, I mean, some are, but you get the statement, and you just completely disagree with it. You can be a man, woman. You see something. Every man is this, and you're like, but I'm not that. Like, it happened to me in the early 2000s. There was this book that came out, and if you've been in the evangelical world long enough, you've heard of this book. Phenomenal author, one of the best writers I've ever heard from. But this book came out called Wild at Heart. Anybody remember this book, Wild at Heart? So people from my generation, like it was this big thing when I was about 20 years old, and it was about like being a man is all about getting outdoors and being in nature and camping and hunting and fishing and mountains, and you don't eat unless you kill your food first and then you cook it over an open fire. And I look at this and I'm like, guess I'm not a man then. I mean, listen, if you enjoy that, that is awesome. But me, like, I've never really hunted in my life. Like, I bought a bow last year. I don't know why. It sits in a closet. I have not shot the thing once. And hiking, like, I don't hike. Like, why would you hike if you've got a perfectly good bicycle to ride? Like, don't get me wrong, I like adventure. It's just not necessarily like the traditional manly adventure. I love camping. If I can plug in my camper to a source of electricity and use my air conditioner, hook it up to clean water that's just constantly coming in, so it'll go into my water heater and I can take a shower in my camper. It's basically like I'm living in a tiny house out in the wilderness, but not too remote. I don't want to be like where there's no civilization. I mean, it's just a camper. A bear could just climb into the thing. I don't even know where there's bears. Are there bears here? There's no bears here. But we hear all these things. We see these expectations, and we're like, do I have what it takes to be what society expects me to be of a man? Like, and here's the deal. Everybody needs to understand, every single man you know is under pressure. Pressure to perform, like real pressure. And you can only handle a certain amount of weight, right? Before the weight becomes too much. I'll explain it like this. I like to go to the gym consistently. I thought about like doing a thing up here, but I don't know actually how much weight this thing can handle, so we'll just talk about it. But when I was younger, it was always, how much can you bench press? How much can you bench press? Can you bench 200, 205, 235? And like that was always, like I was always so competitive there. And I can still do a little bit. Like if we have a bench press and you put 200 pounds on the bench, I can still push that up. I'll be sore the next day, but I can push that up. I can do a few reps. You put 235 on the bench, I'm going to need a spotter, but I can bench that. You put 275 on there, if it's a good day, maybe, but I'm probably going to need Nick to lift that thing off of me. It's not like you put 300 on there, and I'm done. I'm done. I don't know if you can lift that off me, but if you can, good. Otherwise, we're both in trouble, right? And so some of you could do that easy. 300 pounds, I couldn't. I can only handle so much. And every single one of us is under pressure, and we often wonder, do I have what it takes? Do I have what it takes to be a man? Do I have what it takes to be a husband? Do I have what it takes to be a father? Now, I don't know if this is politically correct, but I don't really care. I'm just going to tell you how it was when I grew up, okay? So I don't know how it is today, but when I was a kid, like guys generally didn't get prepared for relationships, did we? We didn't. Girls did. It was interesting. In fact, I walked into a discussion in our lobby about this about a month ago. You never know what kind of discussions you have in front of me are going to turn into sermon illustrations, and so just be careful, all right? So watch out. But the people in the lobby were having this conversation. They were about my age, all right? And so if you're my age, when we were kids, girls were playing with Barbie and Ken, right? Ken and Barbie, are they still a thing? Did they get canceled too? I don't remember. But the girls played with Barbie and Ken, and so like they had did you ever have an easy bake oven when you were a kid? Yeah, the easy bake oven. You have a kitchen set. The boy didn't have any of that, did we? No, the boys were outside shooting out windows with a slingshot, weren't we? And burning ants with a magnifying glass, that one was fun. We would take our sisters' Barbies outside, and we would shoot them with a BB gun. And we didn't get trained at a young age for relationships. In fact, I'm not trying to be mean, but the majority of the things that women will learn about men come from other women. And you're like, well, he's so shut down. He's just so shut down. He's always shut down. It's because he's probably wrestling with this question. Do I have what it takes? Let me tell you something about a man and shutting down. The reason a lot of men shut down is because most of the time, a man won't play a game he doesn't think he can win. Like, he won't. If two guys are playing a video game and one of them is just destroying the other one, the one who's losing, what'll he do? He'll shut the game off, right? And he'll storm out of the room. And I know men who to this day won't speak to each other because one of them shut the game off in the middle of an important moment back in middle school. Like men are constantly being reminded of how short we fall, and we know that we fall short being a husband. It just happens. There's pressure. And there's this question, do I have what it takes? Do I have what it takes to be a dad? And being a dad is a scary thing, is it not? Like, it really is. Like, as I look back on being a dad, I've got one teenager, I've got one, he's not even a preteen yet, but he thinks like one. And let's just be honest. More often than not, fatherhood was just not modeled for us. And so many men were figuring it out on our own. And listen, if you feel scared to lead your family spiritually, I completely understand. Someone asked me one time, like, what's the biggest crowd that you've ever been in front of, speaking or doing music or any of those things? And I had to think about this. There was one event, there were about 2,000 people there, and I was leading worship. I'm singing, and I was new to this whole thing. And they're like, were you scared? And I was thinking about that, and I was like, I wasn't scared at all in that setting. But you know what makes me scared? Like, to this day, praying with my family. And you're like, but you're a pastor. That's supposed to be easy, right? No, it's not. And I'm not talking about like a little before dinner kind of, God, thank you for this food. I'm talking about like praying with my family, like an unrehearsed, unmemorized, not like a little formatted prayer, but like you're praying in faith for God to come through in some way. That terrifies me. I don't know why, it just does. And if you're a man in this room or watching online and the thought of praying with your wife or your kids scares you, it does not mean that you're a bad Christian. It simply confirms that you are a human. Asking the same question we all ask. Do I have what it takes? Do I have what it takes to be a follower of Jesus? Listen, there's not a man in this room, hopefully, that hasn't felt at some point in their life like he's fallen short in his walk with God. And let me just say, most discipleship material for men, by the way, like men's ministry material, like as I've looked through, like, okay, what would be like good curriculum to take guys through and all, most of it is written by men who don't have a clue. And I'll explain it like this. And none of this is wrong, by the way, but a guy is born into a Christian home, and he goes to a private Christian school, and then he graduates, he goes on to a Christian college, and then gets a Christian graduate school, and he starts writing Christian material for non-Christians who want to become Christians, and they've never, and yet this writer has never had a real-time conversation with a person who is not a Christian already. And so the standard is set way up here by people who have never known what it is to struggle. And so we're asking, do I have what it takes to be a Christian, to be a godly man? Because, see, we get these high standards that are set for us, and then this is what we're told. The church is a safe place to confess sins. But we've understood that church is a safe place to confess Christian sins. What do you mean by Christian sins? I'm glad you asked. I'll tell you what I mean. It's like a Christian sin is, y'all pray for me. Oh yeah, what's going on? I only read my Bible 5 times this week. It's like, oh brother, bless you. And it's almost as if church is a place where we're taught that we're not supposed to be real. Like we don't know what to do with real. Like, hey man, how was your week? Horrible. I hope that changes. Good luck. And we find someone else and we sick them on them, right? And like, but we need to understand, I've said this before, you can't be healed until you get real. Do I have what it takes? And let me tell you, God said, yes, you do. You're like, how do I know that? Because his word's pretty clear. You were made in his image. That's how I know. And last time I checked, God doesn't make mistakes, right? So question number 2. Can I trust you? Can I trust you? You're like, who's you? Everybody. Can I trust you? Every man asks that. Doesn't necessarily ask it directly, but he's asking this of everyone around him. He's asking this of his spouse. He's asking this of his friends. He's even asking this of God. Can I trust you? It's difficult. It's difficult to get a man to open up, isn't it? Like, he's asking this of his spouse. He's asking this of his friends. Like tomorrow, you could have this conversation, and you can have it today if you want, but you go up to a man, maybe on his after his lunch break, and you say, hey, man, what'd you eat for lunch? McDonald's. Yeah, what'd you have? Number one, no pickle. Nice. Fist bump. Conversation over. You go up to a woman tomorrow. Hey, what'd you have for lunch? You're going to get a little more details than that, right? Like, I went to this one place, but it was closed. There was too many. I'm not even going to do an imitation. It's not going to be nice. But every man is asking, can I trust you? And listen, every man needs another man he can trust in his life. And you're like, oh, like an accountability partner. Nope. I'm not talking about an accountability partner. And you've heard about that probably a lot, like growing up in church. Accountability partner. You need an accountability partner. An accountability partner just becomes a glorified parole officer. You tell them what they want to hear, and you're done, right? But every man needs a dude in his life that can challenge him. Like a guy who you've given access to actually ask you questions you don't want to answer, but he knows you enough that he can sniff out when you're not telling the truth. Like, we can laugh together, we can cry together. Somebody he can trust. A guy needs that in his life. And about 10 years ago, I heard this phrase, if a man dies and he has 5 true friends, he was in a good space. And I used to think, 5? I got like 15. I'm here to tell you, I didn't have 15. If you die with 5, that's a good place. Men who can look each other in the eye and tell each other the truth and not judge each other, that's a rare thing these days. They challenge each other. Like it says in Proverbs 27:17, we love to quote this in like men's conferences and things like that. It says, iron sharpens iron, and one person sharpens another. Now, over the last 4 years, since we moved here, I really got into metalworking. And I'm not good at it, but that's, I think, part of like what I'm really drawn to it about is it's like this new like art form that I'm like trying to get better at. But what I've learned, iron sharpening iron, when this happens, sparks fly. Do they not? Every man needs a man that he can trust in his life. And if there's a man in this room that has a tough time trusting somebody, it's probably because at some point in those sparks flying, you got burned along the way. And so if you're a spouse, if you're a wife, he's asking himself the question, can I trust you? And we did this like weird thing, but of course he can. Like we've got to understand. Every man asks this in some way, shape, form, or fashion. Can I trust you? In women's ministry, we love to quote Proverbs 31, right? There's whole ministries named after Proverbs 31, and it's because Proverbs 31 is describing this virtuous woman. And one of the things that the writer says in verse 11 is the heart of her husband trusts in her, and he will not lack anything good. So her husband can trust her. His heart trusts her. Now, don't answer this out loud. But have you ever just thought, ladies, he's just so shut down. He's so shut down. He just won't open up. And you open up to him, but he won't open up to you. Well, number one, sometimes that's not true. And because like we've talked about this before, and I've made jokes about this before, like you use way more words than him, right? Everybody has a certain amount of words each day that they use, and women on average just speak more words than men do. And so sometimes he's just used up words, right? And number two, I'm just going to explain this to you. Sometimes you're telling him things that it's probably a whole world he's not in. Okay? And bro, you don't need to say amen. I got you. All right? So it's like I went shopping, and this was on sale, and so I had to get it. It's like they were paying me to take this. And if I hear TJ Maxx or Sam's Club or Target, like I start glazing over. I just see dollar signs just flying away and disappearing, never to be heard from again. That's all I hear. And ladies, so if you're talking and you notice your man is kind of glazing over, the brother is just on information overload. That's it. And I'm just trying to help him out. Anytime I make a generalization, I hear afterwards that there's exceptions. So I know that there's exceptions, sis. But generally, women process in circles. Men process in a straight line. And so that's why when he's not talking to you as much as you're talking to him, it's not that he doesn't care. He's processing in his way while you're processing in your way. There was a book that I took some youth group students through years ago called Men Are Waffles, Women Are Spaghetti. And so it's like, the idea of this is everything's interconnected. And so you can have this conversation and you go down this trail and there's just a little bit of everything. And with men, it's like you're in one box of the waffle at a time. And so like I'm in my box over here that's devoted to this, and that's why I can't just get into this other box and then back to this other box over here. Is this making sense? Okay, because I wasn't planning on talking about that, and I have no idea where I'm at in my notes anymore. But sometimes you just got to give him some time, right? And you're like, I give him time. I'll walk away, and I'll come back. That's probably like a minute or two. Like, you got to give him some real time sometimes. Sometimes he needs a day. Like, sometimes he just needs to, go into his cave for a little bit and then come back out, and I promise you, he'll be ready for the conversation if you just give him some time to figure it out. And don't be like, why does it take so much time? Well, that's why he shuts down. Do I have what it takes? Can I trust you? That's the question. Can he trust you? Can he trust you? And every one of us is going to go, well, yeah, of course. But if he opens up, he really opens up and he tells you what he's wrestling with, is that safe with you? Or does that conversation go straight to your girl friends? Because I promise you, if it gets back to him, he'll shut right back down. It'll shut him down. He wants to know, can I trust you? And sometimes when you're hanging out and you just say, what are you thinking? And he says, nothing. Sometimes he's telling the truth. Other times he's wondering, can I trust you with the truth? Last question. A man is wondering, is it too late? You're like, is what too late? Is it too late? Have you ever wondered this? Like when a man messes up and he knows he messed up. Like I'm talking about the man who isn't passing the blame and playing the victim or making up excuses, like he done knows he messed up, right? As a husband, he messed up in some way. As a father, he messed up in some way. As a Christian, he knows he messed up. There are men in this room. There are men, hopefully, if this ends up making it online ever, you've messed up, and you know you've messed up, right? And you've owned it. You've done the bigger thing. You owned that mistake. What the enemy wants to convince you of in that moment is, at that point, because you've messed up, it's too late. It's too late. You're never going to have it back. It's too late. It's simply too late. Oh, you could have done something for Jesus. You could have been a great husband. You could have been a great father. It's too late now. It's too late. And so I was trying to think of how to communicate this. And so I thought, it's a man sermon, so let's talk about trucks, all right? And so, because we live in North Dakota. And so what I have is a picture. This is a cool truck, by the way. I figured this is a truck that'll check the boxes on just about everybody's list, okay? So this is a 2023 Ford F-250 Super Duty Shelby Super Baja. Yes, I memorized that. It's loaded. Has the best of all options. The truck is so big, it's actually sitting on 37-inch tires that look like roller skate tires, right? And someone's like, are those big? 37-inch tires are huge. And so, like this truck starts at $125,000. And so, no, I don't plan on getting one of these anytime soon. If I'm spending that much money, it better have 4 bedrooms and a garage, okay? But this truck is fascinating. You could pull, like in my world, you could pull any camper with this. You might have to take that thing off the top to pull a gooseneck, but that's my world. Like you could pull just about anything you would need to pull with this truck. It will go 0 to 60 faster than any other truck its size. It's got 500 horsepower, but it has over 1,000 foot-pounds of torque. All right? Now, some people went, whoa, and some people looked at their husband and said, is that good? Couple reasons I wouldn't get this truck. Number 1, I can't afford it. Number 2, I would need a ladder to get into it. Now, if somebody does get this truck, I want to drive it at least one time, okay? Some guys are like, not me. It's a Ford. It's junk. But wouldn't you love to just test drive it? Like, just drive it. You don't have to let your Ford-hating friends know that you're driving it. But can we just all agree this is probably a well-built machine? All right? Someone said no. You're lying. So let's just say you got this truck. Okay, you got a slamming deal on it. Traded your current one straight up for it. You're like, I wouldn't do it. You did, and it's awesome. You have this thing. You go out the next morning, and it's got a flat tire. Everything else is good. Just one flat tire. Now, don't overthink this. If the tire was flat on the truck, what would you do? You'd change the tire, right? Like, it's an easy answer. There's not a man in this room who would walk out and go, guess it's over. I guess it's over. Tire's flat. Tires always just go flat in my life. Here I am, just trying to have a good life and enjoy my truck, and the tire goes flat. Just send it to the crusher. I'm done. I hate this truck. You wouldn't do that, right? People are going to look at you and be like, good grief, just change the tire. But what if you went out and all 4 of those probably pretty expensive 37-inch all-terrain tires were flat? All 4 of them are flat. Well, I guess you'd replace 4 tires, right? What if you went out and the windshield was busted? Time for a new windshield, I guess. You're not going to look at that and go, well, it was fun for a while. It's fun while it lasted. It's too late because the tires are flat and the windshield is cracked. My question is, if we had an F-250 Super Baja and would not discount it because the tires were flat and the windshield got busted, then why would we allow the enemy to lie to you and tell you that your life is over and it's too late because you've had some flat tires and some broken windshields? Why would we let him do that? Why would we buy into this lie that it's too late? Because listen, you are way more intricately designed than some truck. And like the creator of the universe made you, designed you in his image. Some guy in a factory made this. I'm just going to say God has the upper hand on this one. Would you agree? And so you are created in the image of God. And yes, flat tires and busted windshields happen, but no, it's not too late if we understand a couple of things. Number one, we've got to get honest with God. We've got to get honest with God. Yes, flat tires and busted windshields happen, but no, it's not too late if we understand this. Like, I love King David. I love King David because he's listed as a man after God's own heart. But David is not a man after God's own heart because of his superior moral performance. Like when you read about David, David screwed stuff up, right? He messed up all the time. In fact, David was a bad husband at times. David was a real bad dad at times. He had family issues like you would not believe. And I love it when he says in Psalm 34:6, this poor man cried, and the Lord heard him and saved him from all his troubles. He's talking about himself when he says this. Just notice how honest he is. David, the man after God's own heart, the man we model ourselves after. He says, this poor man cried out, and the Lord heard him, and the Lord saved him from his troubles. David didn't say, this awesome man called out, this buff, manly man was like, what's up, God? That's not what he says. David says, I'm poor and I'm broken and I'm crying out. God, I need you. And this, listen, this is one of the toughest things a man can do, to just surrender to God. You know why? We love being in control, don't we? We got to be in control. And what I've learned over the years, control is the greatest illusion in the world. You couldn't control when you were born. You didn't control where you were born. You didn't control who your parents were. You can't control the fact that even though you are the safest driver in the world, you can pull out onto the road after this and someone smokes you head on. We are so not in control. And so if your life has been out of control in regards to being a man or a husband or a father, you can stop today and say, God, I need you. God, pour your spirit on me. Like the song we sang, all my life, God, it's you who've been faithful. All my life, God, you're the one who's been so good. And it's because I've never seen this ending in Scripture quite like I saw it when I was preparing this message. I've been really chewing on the beginning of the book of Genesis for quite some time, especially as I've been looking at this. And so let me just ask you a question. Growing up, men, when you messed up, and you knew you messed up, and your dad was coming home, what would we do? We'd run and hide in the closet, right? Something along those lines. That's what we did. We're good at that. We're good at running, and we're good at hiding. We're good at these things. And this is what happens in the book of Genesis. The very first man does this. We looked at this in week 1, but watch this in verse 7. At that moment, so this is after they ate the fruit, right? At that moment, their eyes were opened. They suddenly felt shame, because that's what we do as men when we know we blew it. Shame. Shame that we flattened the tire. Shame that we busted the windshield. Shame. Shame at their nakedness, so they sewed fig leaves together to cover themselves. When the cool evening breezes were blowing, the man and his wife heard the Lord walking about in the garden. So they hid from the Lord among the trees, just like we hid from our earthly father when we were growing up, hoping he might not find us, right? But did he always find us? He always knew where to look, right? Watch this, don't miss this. Verse 9. Then the Lord called to the man, where are you? Now, again, don't overthink this. Who sinned first, Adam or Eve? You're like, I don't know how to answer that. I mean, technically, you would say the first person to do the thing was Eve, right? Who did God call out? Adam. He's holding the man responsible. Don't miss this. God called out to the man, Adam, where are you? After this encounter, did God punish Adam? It's a thinker, isn't it? He didn't. What did Adam deserve? Death, right? But God sacrificed a lamb. He covers Adam and Eve with the skins. Their sin was paid for by this sacrifice. It's early on, but it's a precursor to what was coming. He did this so they could continue on living. And so when God is asking Adam, where are you? It's not, get out here so I can whoop you. He's saying, where are you? Because Adam, I know you messed up. And I know that you know you messed up. And I know that you feel guilt, and I know that you're feeling shame. But Adam, the reason I'm asking, where are you, is because I still have a plan for you. I still have a plan for your life. I knew what you were going to do before I created you, and yet I still made provisions for it. Adam, I've still got a plan. I know you think you've messed up, and I know you think you've gone too far, but Adam, guess what? I'm going to use you and Eve to eventually bring about the lineage leading to the Messiah who's going to come here and redeem everything. He's going to be the one who eventually crushes the devil's head, crush the devil's word, crush the devil's kingdom, and the Messiah is going to come and he's going to deliver the entire world. And so, Adam, I need you to come out of hiding because I've still got a plan. No, it's not too late. And I think he's telling someone here today, sir, I've still got a plan. I know you ran at one point, but you can come running back because I still have a plan. I know you feel like you don't measure up, but I've redeemed you and you do measure up, and I still have a plan. So church, let's not let the enemy take us hostage and cause us to question the plan and the purpose that God has called us to live up to. Because the reality is, if you're still breathing, it is not too late, and God does have a plan for your life, and it is greater than anything that you could ever imagine and think up of on your own. Forget the flat tires. Forget the broken windshield. It happened. It's paid for. It's forgiven. And we have a future in Christ if we will simply surrender to his plan. So would you pray with me? Heavenly Father, I thank you so much for being the God that you are and being a God who, from the beginning, had a plan for every single one of us. Lord, there isn't a single one of us here. There isn't a single one in our life who you have given up on. And so, God, I just ask you right now in the name of Jesus on behalf of every single man in this room, God, that we as men would admit, God, that we are poor and we need you. Jesus, we need you to pour out your Spirit on us. And we need you to pour out your Spirit into our lives. God, that you would fill us with hope. God, that you would fill us with joy and fill us with your freedom and fill us with your love and fill us with you, Jesus. Just pour it out on our lives. And Lord, I want to thank you today for the freedom that you promised to us. You promised to make it available to us, and you follow through on your promises that you give us as we walk with you. Just continuing on in this spirit with heads still bowed, eyes closed. I just want to ask every man in this room, which question hits you the hardest? Do I have what it takes? Can I trust you? Is it too late? And right now, if one of those questions stood out in particular, can you just lift that up to the Lord? Just right now in the quietness of this moment, just give that to God this morning. You don't have to tell me. You don't have to. I'm not asking you to do anything other than in this moment, just give it to God. And if you're here right now and you're a wife, would you just right now pray for your husband? Just pray over him. Doesn't need to be out loud. Just ask Jesus to fill him with hope. Heavenly Father, I just thank you so much for who you are. God, I thank you for making us in your image. God, for designing this life so we don't just get to it at the end of it at some point and say, well, that happened and we made it out alive. But God, I thank you that you designed this, that we're here to make an impact in some way. We're here to be used by you in some way. And so God, I pray that we would be stepping into your plan, Lord, that the enemy wouldn't get that upper hand when he thinks he's convinced us out of it. But God, that we would be reminding ourselves and reminding each other that you are here, that we are here on purpose, that we are here for a specific plan, every single one of us. And so God, I pray that you would do what only you can do with all of this. God, lead us from this moment out. We thank you, and we love you, and we trust you. We pray all this in the name of Jesus. And everyone said, amen. Listen, have a great week this week. Next week, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to talk about women spiritually. It's going to be fun. We'll see you next week.